how do we get a point though? If you lose a point from having the same headline, what's the whole point of points? Like, do we each get?
I thought you were going to come up with this.
3? Well, you can't give me a rule and just tell me
I'm
to
just
leave
kidding.
the rest
I'm just
of it.
kidding. I'm just messing around.
You dangling the competition in front of me, but you haven't actually come up with anything.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, I suppose we'll forgive you for this time. We're back, but
Yeah.
you don't need to dangle competitions in front of me. Welcome, everybody. We are going live here across the board. Just trying to make sure we're getting up and running. Yep. Live on YouTube, live on Rumble. We are back after a couple weeks of pre-records.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to be with you. Glad you're here. It's Thursday. It's noon. It is Unauthorized Caucus time, and we're back live, and we're excited about that.
Yeah,
so,
happy to be back.
Yeah,
I've missed this.
We missed a few things too. Like there were a little bit of things that happened, but there were some necessary breaks. Like I said, we were both taking some time off, going out of town, but it was good. This is we're going to do a little bit of a news roundup, but the main headline that we need to address is that I have finally visited the 8th wonder of the world, Buc-ee's.
Yes, it is a beautiful thing.
I've been to a Buc-ee's now. We were down south, and I got to go into one, and basically, how did my wife put it? Walmart and what was it? What did she say? It was
heaven.
Like no, heaven. Spoken like a true Texan. Walmart and something had a baby, and I don't remember what it was, but that's exactly what it is. It's absolutely crazy. Like, it's very interesting. So I've had my first Buc-ee's experience. Bought a hat, got an ornament. So I guess it counts now. But there you go. That's my biggest news from the week. Otherwise,
well, everything's bigger in Texas, and everything that comes from Texas is bigger. And Buc-ee's is no exception.
That's for sure. Beaver nuggets are good though. Those little puffed corn things. Oh man, it's a good snack. Anyway, enough of Buc-ee's. There's been a lot that's been going on, and we're glad that you're here with us today. We're going to cover some headlines and talk about it. First things first, though, don't forget, wherever you are, like, share, and subscribe. If you're on Twitter, retweet, Facebook, share, YouTube, or Rumble, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications, because we want to make sure other people are seeing that you are watching this and it's worth their time. But mainly go to phyllisschlafly.com and sign up there for our email list. You will not miss anything, including the recap email that we send out after each of these live streams with all the links that we talked about and the different resources. So go to phyllisschlafly.com and sign up for that now so you don't miss. But yeah, we dove into a couple of different topics the last couple of weeks. There was a presidential debate, or a vice presidential debate that we missed. I don't think that we missed talking about anything on that. There wasn't much to talk about.
It was a snooze fest.
It was, I've watched a recap of it. I didn't actually watch it in its entirety, and not a whole lot happened. But
Chris Christie had that profound line about Donald Duck.
Donald Duck, that line just went on and on.
It was horrendous.
It was a very long delivery. I'll say that. So
with no punchline, and then he had his kind of a smug grin at the end that really did not correspond much with the crowd's reaction.
Yeah,
he thought he was dropping the mic there, but he really was not.
It was interesting. It was very interesting. But aside from all of that, though, things have happened. There's been a lot going on, especially just in the last 5-6 days, not even the last week. So we figured it would be a good time, instead of diving straight into one topic, to actually cruise across a few of the headlines and talk about it and have a discussion, kind of jump back into the swing of things. And actually, we have not talked to each other about our headlines, which is the kind, if you were here at the very beginning for the banter portion of our programming, you noticed that we were talking about points, because if we each have the same topic or headline, we were going to take negative point anyway. None of it made sense, so we just threw it all out at the beginning. But
I said this to him like 3 hours ago, and he didn't question it then. So he waited till just now to question the point system, and I was exposed that I had not had a fully developed point system. So
just like Congress, wait till the last minute and then throw in questions and kink. Oh, there's one of them. Let's talk about that. No, but really, that's one of the ones I wanted to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on. One of the insider things in the midst of some of the more obvious things that I think we're going to get to and have a lot to talk about, that I wanted to kick us off with. What do you think about what's going on? First of all, what are your reactions to Matt Gaetz making a motion to vacate the chair? Kevin McCarthy is no longer the Speaker of the House, or won't be. What? How is that technically? No, he's no longer the Speaker of the House. He is gone. There's a Speaker pro tem, And maybe as early as today, they're having elections for speaker again. And
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, the conference voted to potentially nominate Steve Scalise from Louisiana, but he technically got the majority of Republican votes, like 110 to 99. I mean, they have nowhere near 217.
Mm-hmm.
What in the world are we headed to? I know we've got some big, almost existential level world things to talk about, but this is just fascinating that we're doing this for the second time this year. I don't know. What's your take on this?
Right. I thought it was really interesting how, Matt Gaetz is very much a America First congressman, which is very good to have him in Congress, fighting for those.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting was when I was kind of looking at the social sentiment as that was going on, the reaction from the left was very positive, as you would expect of a Republican Speaker. The House got booted out, but it's interesting because it was Matt Gaetz's doing, essentially. It was him really putting the foot down. And this was a few weeks ago now, or a week ago, or
this was
last week.
Early last week. And I mean, this is, to me, the reason this whole thing happened, his motion to vacate the chair, I think this is a good thing. This is the or else. When they got Kevin McCarthy to agree to this series of things back at the original speaker fight, when there were 15 rounds of voting that happened before he was elected, they asked, we want these 12 up or down issue votes. We want these budgetary things. We want you to do this rules change and that, and et cetera. And he agreed to them all, but there's got to be an or else. Like there has to be a sense of, or a way of accountability. This was it. Letting one person make a motion to vacate the chair, to remove the speaker, because there's so few Republicans in the majority compared to the Democrats. Like, all it takes is the 5 or 6 of them, and there were what was it, 20 Republicans that were voting against McCarthy at the highest point. All it takes is 6 of them to vote with all the Democrats, and McCarthy's out. That's a pretty big or else. We'll do this. You got to follow through. He didn't follow through. Matt Gaetz did, and followed through with the or else. I think this is a really cool course correction on the system that's taking place. So I'm just the prospect of how this is all going down. I don't think that this is embarrassing. I don't think that this is problematic. I think this is healthy, because for too long, stuff has just played out with the whole, the uniparty thing, the next in line, the this, the that. You're watching accountability happen, and it's very uncomfortable, but this is how it works. I think that's kind of cool. And I'm excited.
Yeah, I think Matt Gaetz is really on fire. Like I saw a clip of him right after speaking to the press, and he just seemed like it was obviously not scripted, because he was having those little jumbled words that happens when it's not scripted, but that meant it was really genuine and that he was really fighting hard. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing Matt Gaetz in the future, because he's demonstrated that he's not willing to be complacent with the way that our government is run. He wants action when action is needed, and I'm looking forward to the rest of his career. I hope he's around for a long time.
I agree. When he first came in, I think there were a lot of people who were skeptical, but at this point, I would tend to say that Matt Gaetz is proving his consistency and his value in Congress. So right on all the issues. I'm not saying that, but he is definitely poking the bear, disrupting the system where it needs to be disrupted, and causing accountability and transparency, which can't hurt. I mean, where we are, it must be done. So I'm curious to see how that turns out. I know that we've got this big potential now between Scalise and Jordan. A lot of people talking those two names back and forth. Several on, what was it? How many of the Republicans got onto Twitter and nominated? I saw Troy Nels nominated Donald Trump, which, if you've been paying attention, Ed, our president here, has been saying that for a long time. Trump for speaker. Wouldn't that just be funny?
That would be incredible.
Oh my goodness. Which, by the way, there's your nugget of wisdom for today. You do not have to be a member of the House of Representatives to be elected speaker.
Right.
That is not actually in the rules. So it's possible. It's not a crazy thing it is crazy. It would be crazy and awesome. Right. But it's how chaotic would that be? You want to disrupt the system. But he could technically be elected speaker. So there's your little constitutional nugget in there.
Well, I think the one of the issues is somebody found a rule that if somebody's been indicted, that makes them what's the word I'm looking for?
Ineligible.
Ineligible.
That might be. I don't know if I fully noticed that, but obviously that one's not one of the serious considerations at this point. It's still, though,
sadly,
it's still, though, it's a really interesting thing that's playing out, and I think it's a very healthy thing that's playing out to get our house in order, because we don't need. In my opinion, I don't think that Republicans just need to fall into line behind the common theme. This is what the left does. They beat people into submission. This is what we're all doing. Everyone get over it and do it. We have to clean house, and it has to be done correctly. So if we can have these things and I hate to say purge, but prune, purge, whatever phrase you want to use, I think that this is incredibly important, and there's really no moving forward in a unified manner if we don't take care of some of these things first.
Right.
I think this is good, and I think it's healthy. I think it's bringing good debate to the forefront. So we'll see what happens with it, but that's my take on it. So that was one of mine. What's something you've got?
Yeah, I'll bring up one of mine. I spent a lot of time trying to find headlines from a couple days ago, which is surprisingly hard to find headlines from even like a day ago because everything's just kind of flooded with the most recent information. But I wanted to look at stuff from 1, 2, 3, 4 days ago. Because over the last 1, 2, 3, 4 days, there has been a growing conflict in Israel, obviously. And one of my headlines, or two of them, do have to do with that. But I didn't just want to do like Israel and Hamas in conflict, because obviously everybody knows that. But a couple interesting things. This is from Business Insider, has an article about how Chinese social media, what's it called, Weibo, on Weibo, there is overwhelmingly pro-Palestinian sentiment, which is what I thought was very interesting. And obviously, that's a controlled site, just as everything in China is. Right. So there are certain opinions that they allow them and don't allow. But it is interesting and maybe even a little bit concerning that because Israel is the U.S.'s ally. It is the U.S.'s strongest ally in that area. And it seems that China is very much so on the other side, as is Russia, because Russia backs Iran, and Iran has been involved with backing Hamas. So essentially just what I'm highlighting here is the Chinese involvement in pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas.
Well, and that kind of opens the gateway to the whole conversation around foreign conflicts, because I mean, it is, historically, Russia as the Soviet Union is our enemy, but this conflict between Ukraine and Russia is a whole different conversation than the Cold War. So likewise here, Israel is undoubtedly our best ally in the region, politically and culturally. It's the only democratic state in the Midwest for the most part, or the Midwest. It's in the Middle East. Sorry.
Israel nestled right between Michigan and Ohio.
Between Michigan and Omaha. But no, it is the only, I would argue, really the only functioning democratic state in the Middle East. It is a natural ally. It's a historical ally. And I mean, you could go into what you want about the history of the state of Israel and formation here in the 20th century. And you could go into whatever you want on a lot of religious views as well. But that's incredibly important. However, that being said, what this raises, what this connection with China, all of these conflicts that are happening really do tie back to America's struggle with China, with whoever China's backing, with their economic incentives and the Belt and Road Initiative.
Right.
It all ties back. So it's kind of like, it feels like the Cold War era. We have all these proxy wars we're fighting in the fields of, the mountains of Korea and the rice paddies of Vietnam, and yet really like we're fighting these Russian USSR backed communist regimes, and now we are fighting all of these groups that are being funded and fueled by statists. I'll lump them together here, statists, all of them, autocrats, whatever the phrase you want to get into, but it all ties back to China, which kind of reminds me to say, this is one of my topics too. So I guess we get a negative point. Sorry, bummer. But I am very disheartened by, and tell me your feelings on this. This, what you've just brought up, this connection is kind of where my mind first goes. Is a big pump the brakes, hold on. Like, yes, these radical jihadists, terrorists are evil people who are committing unspeakable atrocities to civilians. And yes, Israel's response is going to be swift and devastating. And this is all tragic. But as much as I have emotional feelings toward the situation that these people find themselves in, also my brain says, pause. Where does America get involved, though? Like, where does this? I know that this is one of our allies. So check mark in the column of let's get in and help, like help them where we can, how we can, but also what all is at play here and what should we be focused on, or what should we not lose focus on? And in this case, it's my attention is drawn to the our true adversary, our enemy in the world, communist China. So I'm really just disheartened when I see, and I'm going to have to catch up on our Rumble chat, by the way, the next time you talk, because it's going crazy here. Good for y'all. I'm going to have to catch up and see what we're missing. But this is very disheartening to me to see the amount of incredible emotionalism that has happened just in the last few days.
Right.
People I know, people that I follow as public figures, who have just run straight toward the, Hamas is killing babies, so you should help Israel kill them. I'm like, whoa. I mean, I'm not saying that this is a good thing, but like, this is fundamentally a very like leftist style argument. It's just, you're making this giant emotional claim that we all kind of agree with, but then we're running into things that have way more implications than just one thing. Like, stop oversimplifying it. I'm not trying to minimize atrocious war criminal acts, but also there's more than just one thing to think about here. I've been very shocked on both sides to see how that takes place, and I'm kind of surprised how many people are feeding into it.
Right.
It's normally a little bit more complicated than that.
Right.
Even with Ukraine and Russia, it was a little bit more complex than that. Oh, Russia's bad, and I mean, people articulated more, but this time around, it's just Hamas are baby killers. What more do you need to know?
Right.
And I'm like, whoa. I mean, yes, but whoa. Hold on. I'm kind of baffled by that. This is the first time I really feel like I've just seen everything stripped away, and it's just this pure, weird, emotional argument. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I don't think this is the first time that we've seen that. I mean, I think we saw a very similar reaction when the Russia-Ukraine conflict started, because automatically it seemed like everybody is like, Putin is an evil villain, and he's just evil, and we have to hate him. And nothing is ever as simple as that, and I'm not saying that Russia's right or Ukraine is right or anything like that, not taking a position on that matter, but rather that geopolitics is an extremely complicated thing, because local politics is an extremely complicated thing. Getting involved with like your city town meetings and that's complicated. So when you have two entire states that have two histories of conflict, and in the case of Russia, Ukraine, or both, in both instances, Israel, Palestine, and Russia, Ukraine, it's like separate states claiming that they deserve or own or have a historical right to certain territories. And with that comes a lot of baggage, because they view this as their right. But when it comes to the baby killing thing, I think it's interesting because and I saw similar, possibly apocryphal stories coming out of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, where they were like, Russia has rolled out the human wood chipper 9000, and just like these like death machines that they were apparently throwing corpses into, and people were just like sharing that like it was fact, and I don't think it was ever really confirmed to be fact. And I saw yesterday, Jack Posobiec retweeted or like re-telegrammed my fellow Hillsdale alum Josiah Lippincott, who's a political commentator, and he just said that he said some Telegram tweet thing. It was like, Hamas is just killing Israeli babies. Source, just trust me. And I've been seeing a lot of that. People are making this claim, but I haven't seen a ton of backing to it. But that's because I feel like we have a desire to paint our enemy in the most negative light imaginable. And that is why over the last 2 days on Ed's show, he's talked about distrust but verify. He always says that. He likes to say that a lot. And he's like, this is especially true with war footage, because we're going to see a lot of it in the coming days. And you should be automatically skeptical of everything you see, because we've already been seeing clips from years ago or months ago or something. We've been seeing those clips, but they're being sold to us as, oh, this is today, this is yesterday. So you should automatically be skeptical of any claims, especially when they sound like a comic book villain's plot. And that applies in all cases of war. If it seems like this is coming out of a Marvel movie, you should meet it with much skepticism, because that's less so the facts being presented as they are, and more so our Western mind understanding the facts in the frame that has been provided for us by the media and by the universities. And that's where I think it's really interesting, because we have these assumptions about Hamas and the things that they are doing,
Mm-hmm.
some of which are true. And obviously they struck first. I believe that's not a very good thing to do, to attack people and kill civilians.
Right.
The radical take from me, but. Pro-Palestinian sites usually share videos of like, oh, look at what the IDF did here or there, and they highlight different things. And in this Business Insider article, it talks about how the Chinese view Israel as similar to Japan, like a small state in a big continent, and they do not like Japan after World War II, and even likening Israel to being a Nazi state. That is a direct quote from here, which is a bizarre comparison, but it says a lot that our frame of reference from where we come from is going to affect our interpretation of the events as they happen. And it's important to put those things to the side. That's why I haven't really said anything like, oh, I think this is exactly what's happening in Israel, and this side did these things right and these things wrong, and the other side X, Y, because it's a 4-day-old conflict, and it would be, or more like 5 days, but it would be unwise of anyone really at this point to lay down a definitive explanation for what is going on, the motivations for it, when it usually takes like 500 years for us to have the historical facts absolutely in order.
500 years, true. And I see a word here. Someone over in the YouTube chat said that this is, people like to regurgitate talking points more than doing the critical thinking or analysis of situations. That's analyze is really the word that comes to my mind is whenever, and I feel like this is something that people hop on Donald Trump for all the time. Whenever he said, oh, he says nice things, which by the way, there's one of the other links I pulled up. He says nice things about North Korea. He said nice things about Putin. Well, if you go look at it all, it's like, well, no, he didn't. He's saying thoughtful things that are meant to, well, hold on, like pump the brakes on just, making the rhetoric more inflammatory, which is ironic coming from him, the guy who chiefly knows how to inflame rhetoric. He also knew how to pump the brakes on stuff. It was very interesting and unique when it came to the world stage. And I think that is extremely lost. To your point, people just go straight for we must paint our enemy. Like, we have decided this person is the enemy. Now we must paint them in the worst evil light, and everything hinges on this. And it is so extreme. And there are times, this has obviously been done before. Our young men went across the world and invaded the beaches of Normandy to fight back the face of pure evil.
Right.
And of course, and actually someone made a point here that there's an interesting, is there a way, do you think, to separate Hamas from the people of Palestine? This is an interesting comment we may get into, but like we've seen before, it still doesn't mean though that we go into it thoughtless. Like this comes with analyzing and understanding the situation, who's who's in charge, who's brought into this willingly or unwillingly, who's a true believer. There are lots of layers, and I feel like now it's just it is in vogue to just get rid of it all, strip all of that out, throw it away, and just run straight for the purely emotional based argument. You have to agree with me because everything hinges on it. It's just this extreme version of stop thinking and agree with me. And I'm seeing it so much from both sides. I'm wondering, is this just where we are now as a society? Have all of us lost our minds, and we have to work our way back from that? Because this is, to your point, it's not the first time. We did see it with Ukraine. It seems so much sharper and even faster now than before. With the Ukraine-Russia conflict, Putin bad man, that I don't feel like it was as immediate as this. It's very interesting. I'm very disheartened and sad that this is where we are, but this is that's
right.
Yeah.
Well, and you said you had a similar headline to this. What was that?
Oh yeah, the similar headline. No, that was it. I had pulled up things about that, but
oh yes.
One thing I wanted to pull up. Did you see did you see it has been brought up? I want to make sure I'm not playing sound here. I'm not. It has been brought up. This was very interesting. We're going to go down a little bit of a political rabbit trail here, but on this vein, one thing I saw, the DeSantis war room, and then Ron DeSantis himself on Twitter are spreading around a video of Trump in which he said that Hezbollah was very smart. And there's how dare I stand with Israel? How dare President Trump say that they're very smart and praises them? And I'm like, the clip that you actually shared, he's talking about how Biden's feckless foreign policy has gotten us here, because Hezbollah is not stupid. They're actually very smart. So when the Biden, people reveal these things, like they now know what to do because they're not stupid. That was what he was saying. I'm like, this is actually, the clip is completely against this. Even one of the major presidential contenders, it's just, and not even one of the leftists, which are the people who usually do this. We're going to take something and just so obviously blatantly run the other direction with it. I look at this and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just, here we are. And I saw Cernovich made a post, something similar, about how a press secretary posted a picture of him with a fabricated quote. It's like, everyone, all the way up to the highest levels of paid professionals, have lost their minds in the ability to analyze, to stop, to fact and figure look, and basic research. Do you think that this flies, or does this have to, like, do people finally get sick of this and it doesn't work anymore? Or is this just the direction that society is going and we're abandoned to it? I don't know.
Well, people are going to eat it up one way or another because it's an easy way to consume information that has a high emotional impact. And that's just, in the age of social media, we're doomed to have to exist on a surface level in that way, no matter what. There's no getting around that unless we destroy the internet once and for all, which is impossible. But I mean, with the DeSantis thing, he's obviously coping really hard because he's struggling to stay above 12% now, and he's just trying to take whatever cheap shot he can at Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is going to win the Republican nomination. And I hope and pray, because DeSantis is a powerhouse of a governor. He has been great for Florida. He has done some absolutely amazing things for the state of Florida. I hope he doesn't end up like Chris Christie, where in 4 years he's going to get back on the stage and keep whining about Donald Trump. Now, if Donald Trump runs in 4 years, but like Chris Christie just seems pathetic at this point. And I don't want DeSantis to, and I don't think DeSantis wants to go down in recent history in the same way that Chris Christie is so desperately seeking to go down. Because
it's definitely, he's built an incredible credibility as governor, and you'd really hate to see it destroyed over bad campaign maneuvering and tactics, which is
right. And if he wants to run in 2024, if DeSantis wants to run for president, or this is 2024, if he wants to run in 28, I feel like he should not, commit. We're on YouTube, so I don't want to use the political S word. Political unalive by destroying his credibility by taking these cheap shots when at who is going to be the Republican nominee and who needs the backing of the GOP to stop the Democrats, who are more radical than ever at this point. So I mean, that's my take on that. Just like DeSantis, be careful, stop doing what you're doing. You don't want to be Chris Christie.
Yeah, no, I agree, and he could easily put himself into irrelevancy in the future with actions now. I think that's very interesting. What do you? I'm hopping back and forth here between Rumble, YouTube, and a couple other places with live chat and comments. Someone is bringing up where to go. What do you guys think about the parsing of the people of Palestine? Their quotes, not mine. The people of Palestine and Hamas. I know many people truly do care about the people. Do you think some are using the distinction to mask the atrocities? What do you think? Is there, and I know that this is across the board, I hear the different leaderships, because obviously when you talk about Palestine, since 1940, this is a very fractured, it's not a nation, really. It's a fractured people. The Gaza Strip is ruled by, correct me if I'm wrong, the Gaza Strip is ruled by Hamas, as supposedly the elected leadership of the people. But it's Fatah is that the other group that runs the Golan Heights, or this?
I don't know.
There's another group, and it's very fractured. So do you think that there is a distinction between the Hamas, the terrorist organization, and the people, the Palestinian people who live there? Or is that, like, yes, as in all things, technically not everyone is on board with this, but also, that's where we are. I mean, look at the videos of what. Well, I'm going to stop before I reveal my. What do you think? Is there something someone's asking us? So I want to address that question.
Right. Well, I think on like a media understanding level, it doesn't really matter, because I don't think that they are going to get the same privilege that Ukraine got when the neo-Nazi Ukrainian Azov battalion is fighting off the Russians. They're like, okay, well, the neo-Nazis don't represent all of the Ukrainian people. The media is not going to look at it the same way with Hamas, because the American media it's pro-Israel. This is a pro-Israel country because they are our ally, and even a lot of center-left media. I mean, President Biden, a left-winger, they are going to back Israel because Israel is this country's ally. So when media gets its marching orders from the government, it's going to paint Hamas and Palestine in the most negative light possible, which is going to be to tie up all of Palestine with the actions of Hamas. So, I mean, in reality, yes, there is a distinction between Hamas and the broader people of Palestine, but in action, that's not going to be the case. I mean, I think this is a ripe opportunity for Israel to, make Palestine bend the knee and possibly even annex them completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what were you thinking about that?
No, I tend to agree. I was just going to make the point that I mean, it's you could kind of make the same. I hear people make the same points about Nazi Germany and this. Well, not all Germans. Well, no, not all. Of course not. But at the same time, I mean, if you look around, like this is not just like people who are subjugated by this illegitimately elected leadership. Like there's in large part this is a religious and cultural identity and this hatred of their of the another people. It's I think that I would not make that same attempt to parse. Obviously that exists, but I think that a lot of people are trying to that's a softening of Hamas is what I typically find that line to be. And it's pretty disingenuous because obviously that exists, but it's the reasoning that I found. I haven't seen anything. So that's I tend to same thing.
And even if you are going to be the faction or type of person that it's like, oh, I have these little differences and I disagree here and there, it's like that does not matter in the political moment or the moment of war that they are in. Because when a nation goes to war, a nation goes to war. And if Hamas is going to war on behalf of Palestine, then Palestine is going to war. And I think it's reasonable for the people of Palestine to get behind their nation and their fight, whether they disagree or not. Because I think of Erwin Rommel, who I've been reading some of his biographies, and he was like a premier Nazi general, but like his personal views didn't exactly align with the Nazi party, especially leading up to the war. But he was like, well, first I am German, and that is why I'm going to fight this war. And I think that makes sense for anybody from any country to be like, this is my country. I'm going to fight for it, even if I disagree with like the political views of this country.
That's a very interesting topic that I think we should maybe have a whole caucus on sometime. That nationalistic idea, that patriotism, because that's a very interesting line. That you fall onto one side or the other. It gets very dicey. But I think that's a good conversation to have because again, there's another issue that just gets polarized so badly and not actually thought about and analyzed at a good level. Because that's you brought up one right there. That's a very interesting thing. Let me see here. So, by the way, someone else is defending my Midwest slip earlier. Palestine, Ohio, or Palestine, Ohio. Is it Steam? Palestine, Ohio. Yeah. There's Palestine, Texas too. So
that one's not in conflict though. It's just Palestine,
it's
Ohio.
not in the Midwest. Although Ohio being in the Midwest is also a conflict in and of itself because I know a lot of people who reject that as not being Midwestern, but. We don't need to get into that. There's too much.
Should I bring up another?
Yeah, I was going to say let's bring it home on something else. I know we've gone about 30 minutes here. We want to keep people to their lunch breaks if possible. So what last thing do you have for us?
So this kind of ties in with what we were talking about, but more on the because Israel and Palestine are at war does not mean that the Russia-Ukraine conflict has stopped. And this is from the National Pulse. Radically Independent. I've actually never heard of them before, but that's just their quotation underneath the lines.
I know the National Pulse.
Radically Independent, which, okay, yeah, if you say so, I trust you. Zelensky warns of, quote, consequences if Israel war diverting attention from Ukraine.
Yes.
And he doesn't mean this in the way of like, oh, we're going to make Israel pay. He more so means like, this is going to be bad for us.
Don't forget about us. Don't forget about us.
It's interesting because I agree with this statement yet disagree with his statement here because he's saying like this is going to give Russia a moment to breathe and regroup. And what I think is interesting is I don't think Russia needs a moment to breathe and regroup. They have held their defensive lines. They have been unrelenting on offense. So it's I think what's probably going through Zelensky's mind, as much as I can psychoanalyze a leader of an Eastern European country from Missouri, is that he is afraid that the Ukraine bucks are going to start going towards Israel instead. Which I don't think you have anything to worry about, Zelensky. I think our government we're going to pay the price. The American people are going to pay the price to fund these 2 wars that the American government.
Don't worry, they have more than enough money to print for both Ukraine and Israel. I'm sure.
Yeah. So essentially, who's going to be paying the price is gas. Gas is going to go up even more, and eggs are going to get more expensive. Eggs and milk. Say goodbye to having 2 eggs a day. You're down to 1 now because Zelensky needs.
You've still been having 2 eggs a day.
Yeah, I know.
I'm down to a half. So then someone, as you introduced that headline that he warns of diverting attention from Ukraine, someone in the chat, Bizwoofer, says, as well as U.S. taxpayer money.
Yeah.
Which is your point exactly. No, I saw that as well. Zelensky's actually going to Israel to show support at the same time as like making sure everyone knows to not stop giving him money just because Hamas is killing babies. We still need your money too. $200 billion in ammunition from wasn't that, didn't I see that headline too? Anthony Blinken had promised another $200 billion in U.S. ammo for the effort or something.
$200 billion of ammo
or something like that. I saw it and I was just like, wait a minute, what is this? Where'd it go? 200 billion. Let me look at this. We're gonna go 200 billion in ammo for Ukraine. I saw this headline and I wondered about it. 200 million.
Okay,
more. That makes sense. Someone said something and I was just like, what is this? It was like the last moment before we came on.
Yeah.
200 million.
Enough people to use $200 billion
Pentagon
of ammo.
is sending. There's probably some rednecks in Texas that could figure that out.
No, in Ukraine.
I know, but how to use $200 billion?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
That's what I meant. They could figure out how to use that much money. No, Pentagon sending $200 million more in ammunition to Ukraine. Okay, I wondered. I did see the word billion because I double checked it. I thought it was nuts, but I thought, well, we got to move on to the live stream, so I'll figure that out later. But but Zelensky's on the tour to make sure no one loses sight of Ukraine and all the money that they need and all of the stuff that's going on there. It is oh man, it is a crazy. It is a crazy time.
And I think that I think it's important to reject the hubristic stance that we can have any inkling of an idea of what's truly going on right now and what the historical consequences of it will be. Because this is something that Spangler, Decline of the West, emphasizes a lot. It's like the historical facts are not settled until long after. Yeah. Very long after. So the facts that history will remember about the moment that we are in, because this is a historic moment. These 2 major conflicts going on at the same time, what they mean for world history, we have no idea.
And that should be the lesson to us and to everyone, but to us to stop and pause and be cautious, be conscientious, be analyzing what's happening, be thoughtful about it all, because these do have all of these actions and all of our opinions about what's going on. Every action that is taken diplomatically or on the battlefield is going to have consequences for generations to come, for centuries to come. And we don't know what that is, to your point. So it is really a time to be the leaders in distrusting and verifying, to be the leaders in, being thoughtful and being analytical about these things and stopping and saying, okay, I do have an emotional reaction, but as much as my emotions are a good thing, they're an indicator. Like I have this aversion to something evil. That's good. It's not the driver. This is a part of who I am. My emotions work along with my logic and, my conscience or your intuition, whatever you want to call it. These all work together. So I should take that emotional input information and then combine it with these other things before we make decisions. And I think that the world has just given themselves over to this emotional processing. Even people who I like and respect, I'm seeing so much of that on. It's just, well, don't you just hear the emotional argument?
That's how they make their money.
Right. And I'm like, and I'm going to, I'll even say specifically Ben Shapiro has been incredibly emotional about this, which I mean, again, I understand. For some people, we're not talking about my homeland. I get it. My people culturally, I understand this is a difference there, but also there's a way to argue for something. And then there's a way that it's just so simplistic. It's almost kind of insulting someone's intelligence to assume, well, don't you agree with me? Because, and I'm not trying to specifically put words in Ben Shapiro's mouth, but I mean, people who usually are much more analytical about, let's talk about all the reasons why, have just kind of gone toward the emotional side. And it's like, what more do you need to know? Well, I mean, something, not everything, but I need to know a few things. Just that seems correct to me.
Right.
So let us be the leaders in that.
It's a 5-day-old conflict.
There's your line. Velveteen Rabbit on Rumble's bringing us home. Emotions are meant to be ministerial, not magisterial.
I like that.
We confess God's word and submit. That is there you go. Let your emotional input be ministerial, not magisterial, and then consult the others. We need to lead in that. So that's it. There's a lot going on. And we didn't even get to the border. I see money for Ukraine, money at the border.
Yeah, I had a border article pulled up, and I feel like we could go on with these things for hours. This is a ripe time in political commentary.
That's for sure. Which is why you need to go to the email list.
phyllisschlafly.com. Type it in. You're going to get a little goodie bag later today of all these links, and maybe even the ones we didn't talk about. We can give them the links of the ones we didn't talk about, the things that we thought were interesting. But
that's true. That's
true.
If you're here and you're not on the email list, you're not going to know about it. We'll put it in there now. You had me concerned for a minute. Goodie bags. I'm like, what are we sending people?
Yeah, we're sending them information.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
We're sending them conversation starters, like we always say. Things to share with your friends and talk about. And like Ryan always says, we don't come to you because we have the answers. And I think I've made it abundantly clear that I don't have the answers. We come to you to start the conversations.
Right.
And so that you can start these conversations with other people.
So go start a conversation with someone today. Send them a link to this video. Let them know you watched it and they should watch it too. And we will see you next Thursday at noon for another very unauthorized caucus. Shoot us an email in the meantime and go to phyllisschlafly.com. We'll talk to you next week.